Hello and welcome to this video with Devox discussing the recording and production of modular synthesizer made music. Just before Christmas I put up a video from this session with mastering engineer John Webber talking about, you've guessed it, mastering. And that video and this one are from a recovered set of my archives. It was actually recorded a few years back. This conversation is framed around the debut Devox album Telegraph. And there's several videos in this series that have been online for years now, offering some fascinating insight into their backgrounds and their approach. Those videos are linked below too, if you want more of the story, but also check out their second album, 1984, also linked down below, and a little birdie tells me there's a third Devox album coming out soon. But without further ado, here I am with Paul and Nino of Devox, discussing recording and producing music from modular synthesizers. So in these videos so far we've spoke a little bit about how the album was recorded, produced, mixed a little bit. We talked about cleaning up audio when all the parts recorded separately, getting rid of some high-end distortion and things like that. There's everything on there from earlier conversations, from just a stereo recording to being the full thing that you can process however you wish, but that's it, just a stereo performance, to both taking a stereo to record and completely sequentially recorded multi-tracking. Let's start with just recording a stereo mix of the two of you, which is effectively the live performance, right? What's the kind of next stage? If you're happy with that performance, or are you recording long takes, condensing them down? Are you recording multiple performances and picking your favourite one, listening, going back and performing again? What's the kind of approach first to that recording when it's just stereo?
So we will do, we'll run a couple of passes, as you've said. They can be fairly long. I mean, until we get bored, really. We just know, don't you?
Yeah, you know when you've hit a point.
You've hit a point and you stop. So, they can be sort of, anywhere between sort of 6 and 20 minutes, I guess. We won't overkill it. We're pretty good at sort of, putting the brakes on when we feel like we've sort of flogged it and there's nothing else we can get out of it. We don't overkill it.
Yeah.
I mean, even we do that even with rehearsing. We try not to over-rehearse and stuff. So we'll do. So if it's a track that we've got set up on the two rigs, we'll run 2, maybe 3 takes. I think that's about
I think we do tend to make sure we leave enough space for, if we know we might need to condense the arrangement later, kind of put clear demarcations in the throughout the recording, and potentially kind of experiment. Well, let's see what's the beat repeat on a Scalca, kind of having some moments of kind of doing different things, trying different things, 4 bars, right, leave it, try something else, 4 bars, leave it. And then it means that when we go back, right, okay, those bits work really well, those bits didn't quite work so well, so we can just edit, but we've got enough to work with. So it's almost kind of creating a kind of getting performance, but getting like a palette of things that we can choose from down the line.
Yeah, and then really, in answer to your question, what happens after that? Then it is just simply a case of going through, having a quick conversation about which takes we like, which ones we don't, and then and I think quite often, more often than not, what seems to happen, if there's anything we clearly don't like, we'll highlight it. Yeah. And then it's usually a case we won't necessarily, if it's a live performance thing, do the editing there and then. It's usually
I think a sleep or 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a week.
Absolutely, and it'll be one of us that does it. So we might record 2 tracks in one afternoon, but then Nino will edit one of them and I'll edit the other one. I think that's how we've done it with those in the past, and then we'll just send them to each other for review and just say, look, here's what I've come up with. Do you like it? Kind of thing. And you know what it's like when you're working with another person, you sort of have them on your shoulder. Sort of, you can imagine you're sort of thinking, well, what would they think about this? Would they be happy with that? Or and I think we have enough confidence in each other that I'd like to think that. We trust each other, so I'm pretty confident when I'm doing stuff that I kind of know that Nino will like this, and I think it's the same with Nino. I mean, I rarely get something and go, bloody hell, Nino, what's this? That's it, finished.
That's all I ever do. Yeah, I love everything you do, Paul.
Yeah, but recording a stereo track, you've little room to really get into that afterwards in the recording.
Yeah, to balance. If the balance isn't right, we kind of...
So how are you mixing that in the modular? Yeah. So what have you got? What's made you comfortable in doing that?
So what we do with that is when it's just like a stereo take or 2 stereo tracks, because you'll have we've got 2 mixers, so we've essentially got 2 stereo mixers. So each performance will give us 4 tracks, 2 stereo outputs for each system. and you find the bits that you like. Let's say you do the editing first, don't really touch anything else, just get the editing done. I mean, and we everything's obviously balanced, that's what you've got, you can't change it. Then, I mean, I tend to, being the sort of mix engineer out of the two of us, and it's sort of in my DNA to want to get in. I can hear immediately what needs I've been doing it so many years. I know what needs to happen in terms of the frequency response of a track and what I think should happen with the compression. So I will then put a bit of broad equalization on it. I'll usually do a little dip, a little scoop around sort of, you want me to be really specific, sort of, somewhere between, it's usually probably about 160 up to about 210 hertz. I'll be looking for a region around there to kind of pull it out to get a bit more definition and clarity in the low end. I'll then probably use one of the number of plugins that I go to give a little push at around 1 or 2K with quite a broad curve. And then I've got another trick that I sometimes do is I'll use a really quite brutal low pass filter with a resonant push at around 8K, 7 to 8K, and it gives a kind of nice grainy, quite aggressive quality to things, and I might sit that over the whole thing. It's like taking a bit of sandpaper to the entire production and just brushing it. It's like a finish, it's like a veneer kind of thing. I'll also use one of a number of different, I might use a multi-band compressor, I might use the glue compressor in Ableton, which I like because it reminds me of the SSL quad compressor that I worked with for many years. It's the Make It Better button, we used to call it. It's like it puts its arm around the whole thing and pulls the bass up a little bit, and nice. So we do little things like that. So that'll be that's not what I call, some people call that mastering. That's not mastering, that's just that's what we used to do to finish mixers off.
It's just shaping.
It's the same thing. It's just shaping.
You'd have done it on
broad.
individual tracks. You're recording a band, you'd have done that to the guitar and the vocals and the drum. It's just, you can't do that over stereo mix.
It's amazing how, even though it's all kind of down to 2 stereo tracks or even just a single stereo track, just doing the overall EQing, you think, I can't move this bass. It's like, we can just processing a whole track. It's amazing the amount of control you seem to have over individual elements when it's just,
and that will, and obviously you might, if it's a quiet section with an intro or a drop down or a breakdown, that sort of thing, then you might get in there with the pencil and and start drawing in high pass filtering and stuff and cleaning up and watching your crossfades, and it's just so that the hiss on the reverb, as lovely as the reverb is, it's a noisy bugger. So that you're looking to clean things up. I mean, some people love a lo-fi kind of response. We'll probably talk about this a little bit more when we talk about formats that you choose. I mean, some people like to have all of that, and I think there's a time and a place, and
you want it to be your choice, though, I think.
Yes.
It
needs to be a choice, if it feels right. I mean, like, there was a lot of, at the beginning of Dynamo, we did a lot of work on the with sort of controlled distortion at the beginning of that track as the track builds, and that was very, we knew we wanted it lo-fi and noisy, but we also wanted it was also very controlled and carefully sort of sculpted. But I think the nature of what DivKid is and what the sound is that we try to create, it lends itself to a little bit of sort of post-production, a little bit of cleaning up.
I think the really nice tip there, just in case people didn't catch it, the dip in kind of 160 to 250 hertz. To separate the bass. It's not about just boosting the bass.
No.
It's just that little nudge.
Well, you get more bass.
It just nudges things apart that time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the definition.
You create a broader dynamic, a broader frequency response by frequency range by actually taking away all the stuff that shouldn't be there. I mean, generally, as a rule of thumb, for people who are sort of really curious about mixing, regardless of whether you're mixing for modular, whether you're making a high-end pop track or you're doing whatever it is you're mixing, the same rules kind of apply. And you're always looking to apply negative EQ primarily to take away what shouldn't be there, and then see what you're left with. And that's sort of the approach. It always has been. I mean, that's always how I've made I've approached mixers. It's like using sort of like changing the lens on a camera and just trying to bring everything in as focus as much as you can before you start adding anything.
And also then make sure that you've got more headroom for the mastering engineer to then do their work, which is really important when you get it mastered somewhere like Air Studios.
And having, again, that other trick of the sandpaper top end trick of high passing right up to like 8K, nice and resonant, just driving in top end as opposed to, again, just EQ, just piling a top shelf on.
There's a nice filter I use in Ableton that I play around with the drive on it to get just the right amount of bite
Yeah. And broad strokes as well, like you said with the pencil. You mentioned it in terms of filtering, but I guess level as well. Does that ever come into
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so that's a really good point, actually.
Drums have dropped out, you just want to pull it down a little bit for impact
and
or back up. Or...
you might have a sort of a percussive, a semi-percussive kind of melody, especially with some of the sort of aggressive modules. I mean, the Telharmonic, which I love, that can be very bright and jump out, and so, because we're not using limiters and compressors on individual components, inevitably you're not quite going to get the level right on some things. So a part will come in, and although it's musically doing everything it should be, it might be just biting a little bit. So at which point I'll draw in an EQ curve, pulling out sort of probably around 2 to 4K, getting some of that aggressiveness out of it, and I may even draw in level changes just so that the track very, very subtly sort of dips at that point. So these are all things that do take place. We don't just record it in stereo and then give it to John to master. All of that happens.
I think there's a ton to get, because a lot of people watching will just record their stereo jam or track or whatever their intention is. I think there's a ton, all these kind of tips to be had out of those little tweaks. Like I said, it's not mastering, it's just shaping this into what it could or should be.
It's the difference between something. It's the difference between something sounding like a take, a demo, and what we used to call a record. I mean, it is that sort of refining the product, and product's a horrible word, but you're just refining the artifact and shaping it sonically. Once again, like I say, this is a key thing of part of what I do. Yeah,
and it's a shame to not do that, especially with music like this, and I'm sure music that people watching are making as well. All this intent that goes into the music we spoke about, all these intentional things, approach, style, all the background of the album specifically, but to then just say, oh, that's recorded, and it just be done. It just brick walls that
but I think that's
process. I think
it's sort of suggesting that there's this sort of somehow kind of
dogmatic. It's not authentic if you do anything to it after you've recorded.
But it's also suggesting that sort of the other stuff, the music and the performance is kind of what it's all about, and that really all the other stuff is just kind of a technical nuisance that needs to. Well, it's part of the process. It's part of the creative process. It always has been. It always has been.
The emotive experience of something is completely shaped by all of that.
Like
I said, it's the way that the bass moves you, because you've just dipped and created that space. Completely. It's not going to do that if it's like getting the attack and release times wrong on a compressor. If it's just not working for the tempo that you're at, or the feel, or the sounds going in, it can ruin a mix.
And I think an important point to make as well for people watching this that haven't made, that are quite new to making music and are getting into production, just they're in their early stages of getting into it and exploring and finding out whether it's sort of something that they can express themselves through. Is understanding that all of those these are not subtle, nuanced things that we're doing. Sometimes you have to be quite bold, and you have to take quite a confident approach to sort of something like compression and equalization, and be prepared to get your hands on and reshape something sonically. And that goes right back. You listen to recordings, productions from the 50s and 60s and 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, post high frequency biasing, should we say? Then it's amazing how much work is going on sonically in the production on those things. You've got lead vocals, and you go in 1950s, for example, you'll have lead vocals recorded over a sort of backing track, and the lead vocals side chaining the compressor that's over the backing track, and creating space for the vocal. All these kind of processes have always been going on. Engineers and have been sculpting sort of what we hear as finished music production for many years. And in the early days, in the sort of 50s and 60s and 70s, these people were seen as the men in white coats. And I think increasingly in recent years, there has been a sort of acknowledgement of the sort of creative hand at work by legends like Jeff Emerick and such. So and that's important to know. And as I say, it takes me right back to that point I made in one of the other videos, that the mixing console was the first instrument I ever mastered, and those skills, those techniques that I developed all those years ago, still come into play now. I still use my ears in a very similar way.
So you've mentioned a few techniques there that would apply to this, but going from stereo recordings, or stereo for each of you, to completely multi-tracking everything,
Yeah.
take after take. What's the kind of process there? Because there's a lot of, if you're recording an indie band, let's say bass, keys, guitar, vocals, there's kind of a tried and tested method to how to make that sit. Now, of course, there's all the creative stuff as well, and shaping that and giving the band a sound, but there's a certain amount of things. So you've mic'd up a drum kit that you're going to do to help that come together. Modular doesn't have this kind of rule book.
It doesn't, and it doesn't have a rule book, and I think we don't know the answer. I don't know if what we're doing is right, or we just do it like it's just finding a way to get to the end result. It's a means to an end. What's the most efficient way to do something? I mean, I quite like the fact that I'm thinking about how we record modulars in a way that people might have thought about how they record a skiffle band back in the 1950s. The fact that it's this new medium, and we're trying to, as producers and sound recordists, we're grappling with how do we capture this stuff in a way that's got integrity, that is honest, but at the same time allows the listener at the other end of this to sort of get a really three-dimensional experience that puts them sort of close to what it might be like to see a new modular performance live. And for anyone who's seen a new modular performance live, I mean, it's quite breathtaking the first time you see that and hear that, because it is uncompressed. It's not like watching somebody triggering loops from Ableton or from a laptop. It's a really three-dimensional physical experience. And I think for us, that's kind of in our mind when, but there is a point where you don't want to overproduce. You want to kind of capture all of that. And I think that's, so in answer to your question.
Yes.
It is, I mean, the way we've done it, I mean, with Telegraph, the patches already existed when we performed them with Scalca. We then just literally sort of went through key components. So we'd take the whatever was generating the beats and record them down as a sort of beat stem. It was almost like creating stems. The bass went down separately. On Dynamo, I have to say, I think I do remember actually double tracking the bass and panning it hard left and right. So live, that's just one bass. But
it's the same voice though, which is
the same voice. And I shift it ever so slightly, shift the timing of it ever so slightly. So it's not, and it's an old trick, and it just sounds really wide. I mean, the bass on Dynamo, when you listen to that, is incredibly wide, but that's just literally double tracking the bass and panning it hard left and right.
And on Tempelhof, there was again, go back to the multi-track idea. I was kind of keen not to effectively layer more voices than I would have available to me anyway. So everything was used once in that respect. So there might be. There might have been a certain amount of kind of moving of a certain tone of a voice from one part of the track to another.
Do you not approve of my double track in the bass?
No, because that's why I qualified it to say, but it was still one voice.
Oh right, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it isn't a case of
you've got a problem with it.
Yeah, I do. We're having that moment, aren't we? No.
But I don't think you can listen to the album and pick out which ones are more produced than the others. If you were listening with that intent, maybe you could say, all right, there's a stereo bass thing there that the other doesn't have. That one must have been done separately.
I think you're right.
In some way, but it forms a whole. Like I've certainly been involved in projects where there's been a couple of mics in a room jamming in with a band and maybe a few bits DI'd, and that's all we had. But that was the magic performance, if you like, and it sticks out like a sore thumb sometimes. There's a really nice balance of not knowing, they've just multi-tracked this. There's 25 tracks going on, and this one's just in stereo.
I think it would be hard to discern. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that if I was listening to this without knowing anything about the album, I mean, I would assume that a Carla North and a Carla Soda were multi-tracked, because there's so much complexity going on there, and it seems really well balanced. I mean, but it's not. It's a performance, and I just marvel at that. I think that's amazing.
So what's in the cases in terms of mixing? And we can overlay some images for this to get that balance, because you don't have performance mixers.
No, we use two
14:2 mixers.
So we've got two 14:2 mixers, one for each.
So basically, pan and EQ is what's helping you get.
And then two auxiliaries obviously on each. And then one's going to a Verve auxiliary 1, then goes to a Verve auxiliary 2, goes to Disting Mark 3 clock delay, Disting Mark 3. Occasionally we've done patches where sometimes I'll put the DLD on the auxiliary, but generally it's always the Disting. So
the systems are slightly different. So his DLD is brilliant, because I really look forward to hearing that stuff, because I know it always brings an element that I haven't got. So the mixing, I mean, mixing wise, I mean, and you can't do too much with a Mackie 14 into 2.
But just that
But that's
bit
good from a
of
performance
EQ,
point of view.
panning,
Yeah.
just
gives a bit of separation and a bit of lift in places, and it just allows a bit of control. For example, I'll just automatically roll off a lot of the bottom end on the hi-hats. I always have the closed and open hi-hat coming up on 2 channels, funny enough, because it's nice if you're in a performance situation to know that you can just mute those.
Just get rid of the overlaps. You're not having to go back to the sequenced source.
No, exactly. And so I'll inevitably will roll off the some low frequency. Just pull off up to about 140 hertz and maybe higher. I mean, you don't need it. There's nothing going on there, just noise. I mean, whether you can hear it or not, I don't know. But my training tells me to just kind of anything that shouldn't be there, just get it out of the equation. It's just all these little things that they add up.
Yeah. So, in terms of mixing within the one bit mixing, we probably do within the modules themselves. So, for example, the Instro CSL, because it's got so many outputs, and you kind of don't want to just take one and have it going into a mix. And obviously, yes, you could take all the outputs, have lots of them going to mix, but then you've used up all the channels. So a little 2 HP mix. So at least I've got 4 in, so it'll be kind of the twofold outputs, the final output. So a little bit of that.
We've got. I mean, I use the Rosie. I don't think you use yours anymore. Do you?
No.
So I've got the Rosie. So I've got 2 inputs going into that, and one of them is taking the mix output from the Tangle Quartet. I've got 4, and I'll use the Tangle Quartet as a mixer, as a sub mixer as well. So the Tangle Quartet and the Rosie are almost like sub mixers for the big for the Mackie.
Yeah, and it allows you just to be broader on that Mackie.
Yeah, it does. But then things like clouds goes directly into the Mackie on 2 channels, and then I'll have things going into clouds depending on what they are, and then I'll use the blend knob on
not
clouds.
Not always rings though. Not always rings into clouds.
So
you can also EQ clouds as well. Then
you can you can EQ clouds, and you can bring it in and fade it in, because usually it's something textural. And also, but then on what I was going to say is on clouds you've got the blend knob, so that sort of acts as a mix potentiometer as well. So you can blend between something really dry and then going really abstract and then hitting freeze, and then playing with the pitch and then fading back into the dry signal going in. I mean, and that's just one example. The great thing about all modular systems is, there's all those different ways of mixing signals within the system itself, rather than having just a dedicated mixer. I actually avoid having like a dedicated mixer in the rig, because it would take up so much space, and I think it would become less of an instrument and more of like a mini studio for me. And I think maybe I differentiate in my head between
for live performance, you want big faders and big knobs you can just go to.
That's the other thing as well. The idea of this, I mean, it's hard enough with the Stilson sort of muting kind of tracks and stuff.
Just going back to the multi-tracking, we don't have to do specific track by tracks, but the ones that are more heavily multi-tracked or recorded sequentially over the top of each other, what kind of things is going on there? Is it just EQ compression? Are there certain tricks? It's like we said, it does balance against the ones that are just raw captured performances really well.
I think it's like any other track, isn't it?
So it speaks to not doing too much effectively. It's clear that those ones haven't been massively sculpted in the box.
Do you know? And none of it's been really sculpted in the box, to be honest. I mean, it's kind of light stuff. I mean, it is literally filtering, EQ, sometimes a bit of compression, that's it. A lot of drawing with the pencil just to get levels under control. But to be honest with you, that's more when you've just got a stereo mix out. But when it's individual tracks, you've got a bit more control, obviously.
Well, you can do that in the recording, rather than
exactly
going in.
You don't need to
feeling like you need to draw it. You kind of filtered.
It would be the normal thing. It would be a little bit of equalization, maybe. And a little bit of compression. If it's a lyrical line, if it's something that's and it's buried in and there's a lot of stuff going on, you've got a bit of frequency masking going on. Then frequency masking, that's a term, you might want to look that up, folks. Then you would obviously pop a compressor on it and just reduce the dynamic range of that signal, and then you've got more control. I mean, anybody who knows that compression, I mean, that's how it works. If you've got a very dynamic signal and a very busy track, and you can't get that thing heard, you compress it so that you reduce the dynamic range of that audio signal, and then you can push it up louder in the mix, and you can hear all the quieter things get heard. So it just makes it easy to control. So as a mix engineer, you do that with a lot of stuff. You reduce the dynamic range on various elements, and that just gives you you're then, as you say, you're able to then sort of command those broader strokes and manipulate the mix. But these are things that you just do as with any kind of music. So
I think we also record with reverb as well. So you should record with the reverb. So rather rather than kind of applying a plug-in reverb afterwards, because sometimes a lot of the character of the sound, you get rid of the reverb and it's suddenly, what am I doing this? How am I?
Yeah, it's like a singer wanting to sing with some reverb in their headphones.
In a way, yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's such part of the sound. I mean, like we record the clock delays and things. We don't recreate them in Ableton or Logic, you know, because
it wouldn't sound the same.
It wouldn't sound the same. I mean, I think we've retracked things through, and also I should say some of the reverbs that you hear on the album are coming from the ER301. It's got a great reverb in there that you can sort of play with, and I don't know why it sounds great. It's just a little digital reverb in a box. Yeah. Maybe it's the voltage control. I don't know, but it is. Of course, I really enjoy that, and I do. The ER301 can act as a submixer as well. You can have signals going through that. You can apply filtering, clocked delays, reverb. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of the percussive elements are getting that from the 301.
Do you find out of everything, the effects you're more heavy-handed with, either on the mixer when you're recording stereo or in terms of multi-tracking? Creating the depth
I
that's
don't
on
know.
the album.
I don't know. I think...
I was going to say, one example, when we played at Super Booth in 2017, we had this idea, when we were rehearsing, thought, wouldn't it be nice if we put, because obviously we have our two separate mixers, stereo out's going to a little sub-mixer, and just stereo out to front of house. We thought, right, why do we put that stereo out, go to front of house, put it through an Alesis, the Daft Punk compressor, and then have a trigger out from, I think I had a Nit Rider, so I just had Channel 6 on Nit Rider, and just, every beat, put it, just to trigger the sidechain. And because basically we played Telegraph and Scalca at that gig, and playing it was sounding wicked with this sidechain compression coming out. It was amazing. It literally knocked the camera over when I had to keep putting it upright again. Anyway,
there's a great clip on somewhere on YouTube
of me scuttling over.
No, but where the bass drops, and there's this big long intro going on, and suddenly the kick and bass come in, and his face. He can't stop grinning,
and then Paul goes,
and I had to look at the sound guy and just say,
turn it down.
I could hardly get my hands on the system. The whole thing was vibrating. But you were saying it was. We didn't use it though, did we?
But we didn't. When we went to the studio and we thought, right, we'll do this. Didn't work at all.
Everything's flattened everything out. Yeah. So lost all the dynamics. So we've never. In fact, we've never used it since, either live or in the studio.
Just want to, it's really common to just strip a ton of low end out of reverb, just so you can pile more of it in.
I do that.
The tilt's great for that on the
tilt is good for that, and in the reverb, in the reverbs that I use in the ER301, I do EQ them. So I do pull out the low end. I also pull out mid range. I brighten them up. I do work on the reverb. I never use a reverb just raw. Rarely.
And actually EQing before it hits the reverb as well.
Pre or post EQ.
Yeah.
Just don't let it react to any low end. Just don't even feed it any to start with.
No. So there's no reverb on bass. I mean, I think we're more heavy-handed live than we are in the studio, and certainly there's much more heavy-handed use of reverb and delays. It just kind of works, people. I mean,
it's the energy and you can't do all the nice little tricks that you can when you're sat in front of a session, stereo or multi-track. So I think it's just about capturing. Well, just going with that performance. Not to say it's wrong, but it's very forgiving live, I think.
It is.
There's an energy to just can in too much reverb into the room.
It's great. And I go well over the top with clock delay on stuff, and it's just like way too loud, but you it's going to sound great in a live situation.
You always need something to sound too loud or to sound wrong to kind of pull people in as well. So if it's all so tasteful, just make two dimensions.
I mean, one of the when we were first getting the DivKid thing together, we were at an electronic music festival in central London, and I won't say where and who, but there was a band playing that we both absolutely love, big fans of, and great, and they were playing some tracks that we absolutely love, and it was great. But it was all coming out of laptops, and it was really uninspiring. And I remember saying to you, this looks so old now, and sort of it's such a strange way to sort of to ask people to come and engage with your music live. I mean, it was flat, and it really felt tired. That as a performance format, it just really felt tired.
Yeah,
and that was kind of part of the motivation.
It was
was that look, there's another way of doing it.
Yeah.